straight to the Cincinnati Bengals. Rookies report July 23rd. Veterans report July 26th. Going to Aaron here first. We've talked a lot about Jessie Bates not receiving a long-term deal, although Dylan reported it months ago that he was going to get it because he said it at a bowling alley of some sort. He doesn't have a long-term deal. Aaron, what should we be looking at from Dax Hill this training camp that shows fans that maybe he could do it?
They got to show me he can do it. I guess that's what I'm looking for. Show me he can do it. We're talking about a guy who, again, I was not very high on in the draft. I spoke about his size. People wanted to compare him to Tyrann Mathieu, and I told him Tyrann Mathieu was a third-round pick. If he can live up to that, then no problem. But his size is going to be an issue when you start talking about being on the back end of a defense. I don't know that he fills that Jessie Bates role. I think he's going to be more of that hybrid interior, can work down in the box, but play some slot guys type role. I think that's kind of where he excels at. And if they allow him that freedom to roam in the secondary like a Tyrann Mathieu, I think you're going to get the best version of what Hill can be. If they try to just force him to be that traditional, hey, we want you to take Jessie Bates' spot once he's gone, then I think that's where he's going to run into some issues, because I don't think that best suits his style of play. But he's a guy that has like a bunch of athletic ability. He's super talented, but he has to be able to be allowed to roam on the back end. He can't be forced to sit on one side like we've seen from a Jessie Bates and just play that side, be physical, go make plays in the secondary. I think he needs to be a little bit more free. So if he does that, if they allow him to get in and work those situations, I think he can grow and prove to be what AJ thought he can be, or what some of the Bengals fans think that he can be.
That's what I kind of still think he's going to be. And I think you make a good point with, not being Jessie Bates right off rip. But if he's not going to sign that long term, this is the type of season you use to breed and bred him to become something like that. And I think, and another good point that you like, and I kind of noticed and spoke about this, firstly with like Jabril Peppers back, who didn't really, pan out the way we wanted him to. But a lot of these defensive players are kind of coming like the basketball type of way, and it's becoming like quote unquote positionless. Yeah, you may be listed as safety. We talked about we list guys as DB now because maybe they line up on the outside when you like the matchup. Maybe they line up at linebacker when you want to fake a rush. Maybe they are playing safety. They have these abilities, great ball skills, great line skills, all these different abilities to let them be utilized in many different ways. And Dax Hill's been able to show that he can do that. He can play up on the line. He can drop back in the coverage. He's got the ball skills. So we just have to remember and temper ourselves that he's a rookie and it may take him a couple games, but I think he's one of those players you're going to watch continue to develop and continue to get great as the weeks go on and as the seasons go on.
You bring up a point there about the versatility, and we started to see that coming to the league years ago. But one of them that really piqued my mind over the last few years was Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson, someone that could play multiple positions and basically get it done everywhere. He's sort of had a rough start to his NFL career. But I like Aaron's point. You can't replace them. Going back to the Moneyball logic, you're not going to replace what Jessie Bates brings. The guy's an all-pro safety. He's not the same player as Jessie Bates, but it just allow him to be him. You didn't go into Jessie Bates saying, hey, you got to be out there doing what you need to do. No, you let him do his thing. You let him groom into who he's going to be. And that's what the Bengals got to do with Dax Hill. I'm completely on board with that. Just let him play football. Just let him get his playing time out there. Jessie, once he signs his not his extension, but his tag, he'll be ready to go out there and play football. And then whatever time that Dax Hill has, he'll be out there learning from Jessie Bates, and it could be as heir apparent.
I think it's important, too. We got to remember what Cincinnati did in the offseason. It wasn't like they just said, oh, we're going to get Dax Hill. They signed and went after everybody and drafted everybody. They drafted Tyson Anderson. They got Cam Taylor-Britt. They got Dax Hill. They got Trey Flowers in the secondary. They've tried to revamp where they felt they were weakest at, which is what we harped on all last year. As good as they played in some of those games down the stretch, we kept saying the weak spot is the secondary. The weak spot is the secondary. And we saw it late in the Super Bowl. Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, they carved them up. And so they went and they addressed where they were weakest at. And I don't know that, and I'm saying this not as the Dax Hill hater, but I don't know that it's Dax Hill that replaces Jessie Bates. That could be Cam Taylor-Britt. I think they want Dax Hill to be more of that nickel guy, what Mike Hilton does a little bit. It could be a Tyson Anderson who turns out to be their future safety if they come along. It's going to be about who is showing up in this training camp, right? Who is starting to make those plays. You might see something where maybe it's Dax Hill who starts that third spot are going to be the guy. Next thing you know, it's Cam Taylor-Britt who starts week 1 if Jessie Bates doesn't sign a tag, or is it Tyson Anderson, or is it somebody else? So I wouldn't be so quick to just say it's Dax Hill. I think with the first round pick, I think he's going to get every opportunity to be him. But if another young guy that they got steps up in that role and is more effective, it would not shock me if it's one of them.
Is it fair? Educate me here. Von Bell is their other real starting safety that you can almost pencil him in as the day one starter at the safety position. Could you possibly see him kind of try and fill the Jessie Bates role? Obviously, you guys talk about not being able to fill and replace Jessie Bates because he's great. But do you see them leaning on Von Bell more this coming season if Jessie Bates is to not play and his role be amplified as we get towards closer to the season?
Different players.
Okay.
Jessie Bates is much better in space. Jessie Bates is much better in the passing game. And there's been times where he's even struggled as he's kind of grown throughout his NFL career. Von Bell is that more in the box, right, closer to the line of scrimmage, put him on a safe or put him on a tight end. He can go out and, lock up some tight ends around the line of scrimmage type stuff. He wants to be down. He doesn't want to be out in the open space, having to get over the top of guys. So I think it would be different. I think that's if for whatever reason Jessie Bates doesn't sign the tag and is not there when we start, I don't think it's about Von Bell filling that void. I think Von Bell is the staple. He's going to do what he does. I think it's going to be about those young guys having to come in and, play more in coverage. And maybe it's a mixture of both of them, maybe playing a strong suit. Maybe it's Dax Hill one play and it's Cam Taylor-Britt another play, depending on what their strengths are. Because like Dylan and, like we all kind of stressed, you're not going to just replace Jessie Bates with one of these guys until they've gotten some experience.
It could be nice too to be able to give those guys those starting reps during training camp while Jessie Bates is figuring out whether he's going to show up or not. It might be valuable to get those first team reps for Dax Hill and Cam Taylor-Britt. Dylan, go ahead.
I wanted to say one more thing on the Bates front. Laugh at me all you want, but I'm just saying, I seriously think the guy's going to be there by week 1. I think he's going to play football this year, no doubt about it, because laugh all you want. Go ahead. Start chuckling.
He put it on Snappy Chat.
Yeah. Snapchat story. He's watching the home run derby, tablet on the bottom left of game film, and he's got a cocktail in hand. He was ready. The fact that he's watching film.
Dylan, that's an NFL player is expected to do. He is not going to not watch film, so he's not ready.
Why is he even bother to watch film?
No, because you have to be ready whenever that happens. Yeah. They could call him tomorrow with the offer that he wants. The problem you're going to run into is Jessie Bates, to my knowledge, and I may be wrong about this, his contract, he is not signed at all right now, and he did not sign his franchise tender, which means he can miss all of camp and not be fined. That is huge. He doesn't have to show up to anything and not be fined, which means he has leverage right now in not being there. But the longer he's not there, the more opportunity a Dax Hill, a Cam Taylor-Britt is going to get. And if Cincinnati sees that they have something in them, you can damn sure believe they can say, you know what? We don't have to cave in and pay this guy. Wow. Now, if all those guys turn out to be busts, then you're like, yeah, we better up the offer and get this guy in here. We've seen this before, and I know it's old school, but the Dallas Cowboys did this to Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith held out. He missed the first 2 games of the year. They could not run the football. They were 0-2. Jerry Jones said, "Oh shit, Emmitt, write your ticket." Paid him his money, and they didn't lose a game the rest of the year. Those are the kind of situations you run into, and these owners will do it until they realize we need this guy. So Jessie Bates has some leverage right now because he's not signed and he's not under contract.
Any shot he's traded?
No, because the safety market would require too much. And at this point, most teams don't have the cap space at this time of the year to do that or willing to do that. I don't think he's traded. I think he either stays in Cincinnati and he bites the bullet and signs the tender to play eventually, or Cincinnati caves and pays him the money.
Next time we talk about the Bengals, Dylan will have reports from the local gym that Jessie Bates plays basketball at, and he'll be able to give us the next report. AJ, you're next on one last talking point about the Cincinnati Bengals. It's their defensive line. We're going to stay on the defensive side of the ball. They chose not to bring back Larry Ogunjobi. He had the whole Chicago Bears thing, and then he didn't get signed by them. They had a second chance to sign him, and they still said no. They passed up on that. Who should we be focusing on with the Bengals' interior defensive line, and what will their impact be this season?
I guess all that money they spent on that back half really bit them in the ass in the front half. But To answer your question directly, my first choice would be BJ Hill. But in all honesty, it's going to come from the guys on the edge making space for these guys to work to set the edge and push them back. Because BJ Hill, while he's serviceable, he's not one of those guys that kind of pops off the film at you. I mean, he's still talented, averaging about 5 sacks last season. But you need these guys. I talked about the Bengals last year a lot, and the word I always used was they were a good unit. When the back half wasn't working, the front half was getting after it. When the front half wasn't working, the back half was opportunistic. It's going to be a lot of that again, in my opinion. And on the defensive line, with the Joseph Asai and a Trey Hendrickson, if they're setting the edge correctly, if they're pushing these guys back towards it, and a BJ Hill can be that big body to stuff it up, that's what you're going to look for. DJ Reader, he's going to be there, but I don't think he's one. I think you'll see his position get rotated a little bit more and see some of these young guys like the Chris Carters they signed get an opportunity. DJ Reader's okay. He's consistently going to get you 2 sacks a season. That's where he's sitting about the last three of the last 4 seasons. But I think BJ Hill's a guy that you're hoping can step up and, maybe get that up to that 7 sack where Larry was, and a couple more quarterback hits this year. If he can get a double-digit quarterback hits, you may not feel the loss of a Larry O as much as you would think they would at this point in time.
And that was a hell of a trade last year by the Giants and the Bengals right before the season started. I mean, BJ Hill had a great season last year. Like, it was just he was buried on the depth chart because Mr. Gettleman fapped to D tackles when he was running his tenure in New York. I mean, that guy drafted one every year. But BJ Hill was buried on their depth chart, goes over to Cincinnati, has a very productive first year in Cincinnati. I like your take there with BJ Hill stepping in. I
think the depth is the biggest key.
Yeah,
they've honestly right now they lack depth. And the amount of snaps that Trey Hendrickson played last year worries me. It's not normal, and he's not really used to that. And then you come back this year, and I just don't see the depth there. I worry about once you get those first 4 out of there, the Hubbards, the Readers, Hills, and Hendricksons, how far do you go into that defensive line? And usually the teams with good depth on the defensive line are a lot, outperforming those without, especially when you're talking about getting a pass rush late in games when the first guys to tire out are usually those interior defensive linemen. So I worry about the depth on the defensive line, losing an Ogunjobi there. I thought that was big for them to, try to bring him back, but they'll be good. They did address, I feel like, their weakness. They'll be solid. But it's going to be tough with the lack of depth that they have on the defensive line.